Hello, I'm Matt Polley, and on the eve of the Cheltenham Festival 2021, I am here to take a look and express my thoughts on the first day of the Cheltenham Festival, which starts tomorrow on the Tuesday. 2 points to start off with. The fact that obviously the Cheltenham Festival this season will go ahead without any crowds. Only the connections of the horses will be there, which is sad because obviously it's the people that create the atmosphere and the emotion. So that's a bit of a downside, especially when connections walk back into the winners' enclosure and are greeted with a roar of excitement and joy at their winning moment. And the other point I'd like to bring up, probably the most important point and one that's talked about on the eve of the festival every year, is the going conditions. More often than not, it's odds on that it's going to be good to soft. It's never going to be any quicker than that, to be honest, these days. Welfare and safety will always ensure that the going is going to be on the safe side. So we thought we'd get good to soft ground. Obviously, Cheltenham have lost a couple of fixtures this season due to waterlogging, standing water on the track, and with some recent rain, which was a little heavier than was initially anticipated. The going now is on the soft side, so official going is soft, good to soft in places on both courses. Obviously, they'll be racing on fresh ground, so it probably won't be so bad on the first day, but it's definitely, I would think, going to be on the soft side of good, if not a little softer. So in a way that helps us, because most of these horses have been running on those conditions or even softer conditions all season. So hopefully the form will stand up. As per usual, the day's racing starts with a Supreme Novice hurdle, which always kicks us off at the festival. Slightly different look to it this season. Only the 8 runners. The market's headed by Appreciate It, trained by Willie Mullins. You can see why this horse is favourite. He ran a great race in the Champion Bumper last season, just being slightly outpaced by Fernie Hollow in the closing stages there. He's done nothing wrong in his novice hurdles to date. He doesn't really strike me as a 2-mile hurdler, if I'm honest. He definitely looks a chaser in the making, and I feel sure that he's definitely going to get further than this 2 miles. But if you actually look at the other 7 runners in the race, he seems to have got the rest of the Irish contingent covered. He's beaten those before, and I can't see any reason why he won't beat them again. So that leaves the main two British candidates in Metier and Soaring Glory. Soaring Glory was very impressive win of the Betfair hurdle, particularly being a novice. Really impressive the way he travelled through that race and picked up and finished that race off. Hard not to be impressed by that. That was obviously off a mark of 1:33, which I thought was a nice weight for him in that race. Little surprised to see him running in cheek pieces in this, to be honest, because he looked the winner throughout that entire race that day. He travelled well, particularly in a race that's run usually at a furious pace. So not quite sure what the thought process is behind the cheek pieces for this horse. Anyway, they've been applied for whatever reason, and for that reason, that would be enough to put me off him a little, and particularly the ground. I think he's definitely better off on good ground, so any easing of the ground is going to be a negative for him. The flip side of that, any easing in the ground is going to be to Metier's advantage, undoubtedly. Ex-flat horse, sport from Ireland, done nothing wrong in his 3 novice hurdle wins to date. Not quite sure what the form amounts to be honest, and I think the ground has definitely been to his advantage in the races that he's won so far, as opposed to his opponents, purely because he's got the ability to handle the heavy conditions. But I still think he's got quite a bit to find to win this race. So an unoriginal selection in the first race, unfortunately, but I can't really see past appreciate it, so he'd be my selection. Moving on to the second race, which is the Arkle 2 mile novice chase. Sadly, this race has cut up a little now because in my mind the main opponent to Shishkin, who was going to be the odds-on favourite now, was in Erjamin, who has looked very impressive so far this season. He doesn't run now, sadly, picked up a small injury. So Shishkin now odds-on favourite and looks to have a very obvious chance of winning this. One side note to this is that as the meeting goes on, we know on the Wednesday the champion chasers Altior has unfortunately been pulled out of that race due to apparently coughing after exercise and having a dirty scope. So it would be dangerous to rule out all of Nicky Henderson's horses based on one horse having a dirty scope, but it definitely sows the seed if doubt in one's mind that maybe all's not well. But basically, I think this horse would have to have a serious off day if he didn't win this race. All Mankind, obvious contender, done nothing wrong in his chases again so far this season. Really aggressive horse, likes to be ridden prominently, and I think with Erjamin out of the race, I think he is going to get an uncontested lead here, which is going to be to his advantage. I can't see anything else having the toe to take him on in the Arkle. So not only is that to his advantage, but it'll also be to Shishkin's advantage as well, because the one thing Shishkin wouldn't want is a crawl, because he's a strong stayer at 2 miles. We saw that last year in the Supreme Novices when he ran up the hill to nab Abracadabras, and this horse is an Irish point-to-point winner, Shishkin, but he's got bags of pace, and that's a deadly combination in my opinion. If you've got the speed to run over 2 miles, but you've got that added bonus of stamina as well, then he's got all angles covered. 2 Irish horses I'd like to mention: Captain McGuinness, who looked like a horse to follow at the start of the season, particularly over fences, has been a tad disappointing, and a slightly clumsy jumper as his form figures would suggest. He's undoubtedly got the ability to feature in this race, but he's a touch risky. Obviously, Franco Deport hasn't done anything wrong, bumped into Erjamin last time, was soundly beaten but ran well that day. I could see him picking up some pieces if there was any accidents to the main two, but I mean Shishkin for me is as near to a certainty as you'll get. So again, unoriginal. We've started the first 2 races with 2 favourites, so not going to get rich there, but that's just the way it is, unfortunately. So in terms of betting, slightly more exciting race to move on to, the third race, the Ultima. Got some might get a little bit of value here maybe, but it's an ultra competitive 3 mile chase, as most handicaps are at Cheltenham these days. You've got 2 options in this race. You go with what you know. You've got battle hardened, conditioned, experienced steeple chasers in the likes of I-Right and Vintage Clouds, who are going to give you a run for your money. They're well versed in these types of races. They're professional. They will definitely give you a run for your money. On the flip side of that, you've got 2 novices in here, completely, well, I wouldn't say completely unexposed, but potentially much better than their current marks. And as we know at Cheltenham, the context of a race, the complexion of a race can change in a heartbeat, particularly with lots of fences to jump, and you really need, these races are so competitive, you really need to find an edge somewhere, and that edge, I think, lies with the novices and their handicap marks. You're obviously taking a chance because these horses are not as battle hardened or as experienced as some of the older campaigners. You'll need a little bit of luck. When you ride in these types of races, you don't often see a little bit of daylight, particularly over the first 3 or 4 fences. And so you have to trust to luck a little bit, and hopefully you get a good position with a little bit of daylight just to give your horse a chance to get into a rhythm. But when we're talking in terms of value, unfortunately the bookmakers haven't missed the 2 horses I like, and those 2 horses are Happy Go Lucky of Kim Bailey's, and one for the team of Nick Williams, both 7-year-olds. Happy Go Lucky in particular has got a very progressive profile, has run 3 really good races at Cheltenham, so that's obviously ticked the box there. Over the team, who I think is really well handicapped off a mark of 140. He would have been my selection had the rain not arrived and the ground is going to be on the soft side, because for me he definitely wants good ground, this horse. He's run all of his best races on good ground, so that would just be enough to sway it in Happy Go Lucky's favour for me. He is favourite, he will go off favourite, but he looks a very progressive type, and in amongst a lot of exposed horses, he's the one that really stands out. Of the two other horses that have regular and consistent competitors in these types of races, obviously I Right, placed in a Ladbrokes and placed in a Charlie Hall. He'll run his race, no doubt about that, but the handicapper knows where he is. And Vintage Clouds is another solid old campaigner, been placed twice in this before. I certainly wouldn't rule out a good run from him. He's got cheek pieces on. He's 11-year-old. He's got cheek pieces on now, just to try and keep him as sharp as possible. And if he can lay up over the first circuit and still be in with a shout with a mile to go, that horse will definitely keep galloping. And the handicap has given him a little bit of a chance off of 143, and wouldn't surprise me in the slightest to see him in the places. So sadly another favourite, Happy Go Lucky, but certainly wouldn't rule out a big run from Vintage Clouds and that. And then obviously now we move on to the feature race of the day, the Champion Hurdle. Looks a super competitive race, cracking race. Everyone's turned up, thankfully. Honeysuckle now is a relatively short price favourite for this. Couldn't have seen it coming this time last year, if I'm brutally honest. She's always looked like a stayer to me. You can't knock what she's done. There's no doubt about that. But I think she's had plenty in her favour, particularly this season. Very admirable mare, but I just don't have her down as a natural 2-miler. A lot of people got excited when the 2 mares running the champion, Lorena and Apple's Jade, and even though I think this mare is obviously a bit classier than those, it was an experiment that didn't work for those 2, and unfortunately I can't see it happening for Honeysuckle. Last year's winner at Batant got beat at Kempton by Silver Streak. That was obviously disappointing, but you can't knock her. She is a Champion Hurdle winner, and you can't help feeling the pace of this race is going to suit her, because the one thing that's guaranteed in this race is pace. Honeysuckle won't want it to be a sprint. Goshen won't want it to be a sprint. All his form at his best is when he's been prominent. And then you've got the enigma of Not So Sleepy, who, if he plays ball and lines up and jumps off, he's going to go a million miles an hour. And you could see Honeysuckle and Goshen just dropping in behind him, and then there being a gap to the 3 main hold-up horses in Epatan, Abracadabras and Sharjah. Now, there is another horse in the race called James de Burley, who I know very little about, only what's been based on his French form, and I have to be honest, I don't know an awful lot about that, but obviously very interesting. They've decided to have a crack at the Champion Hurdle on his first exploit in in British racing. So he's a very interesting campaigner. Abracadabras, I really like. I think arguably his run in the Supreme Novices last year is as good a form in this race as you'll get, really. I think if Shishkin had stayed hurdling and running this champion hurdle, he'd be near enough favourite. And Abracadabras obviously only just got touched off by him. The one negative about Abracadabras is I've liked him all the way along, but he needs good ground for me, and I'm amazed he hasn't had the application of any headgear, because he'll travel through the race and he'll come there with his chance. But I just think in that last 250 yards, I just think the application of some headgear would help him finish off his race. He's definitely not ungenuine, but I just think in the closing stages of a race, he just needs to focus a little bit more on getting his head down. So that's enough to put me off him. So in conclusion, not so sleepy if he jumps off and makes it, won't stay there, and I can see Honeysuckle and Goshen carrying each other along and potentially dragging the sting out of the closers, particularly if the ground's on the soft side. And on that basis, I'm going to go for Goshen, who, had he stood up at the last in the Triumph Hurdle last year, would have been a sensational winner, having slammed All Mankind and Aspire Tau, who also runs in this champion. A little bit off colour during the flat season. Lord knows what happened to him at Cheltenham when he underperformed there, but he definitely back with a bang in the Kingwell at Wincanton, and I think it'd just be a fantastic result if Goshen could win this champion hurdle. So fingers crossed, it's Goshen for me. The fifth race is the Mares Hurdle. Not too much to say about this. I don't have a massive opinion on it. For me, it's a match between Concertista and Roxana. I think everyone would agree on that. Amazed Roxana's running in this and not the Stayers Hurdle. Now Time Hill is out. She has got, for me, the best form in this race, undoubtedly. If I had to choose between the two, I'd probably... No doubt that Concertista is a fabulous mare, but I just think Roxana, even though she's getting on in years now, almost looks an improved performer last year. She looks hungry, travels well in her races, and I'd fancy Roxana to have a squeak in the Stayers. So should be my pick in the mares. The sixth race is a Boodles for the juveniles in the handicap. Horrendous race to try and work out. Really tricky. I won't go on about it too much. I thought Riviere de Tel was quite an interesting runner. Absolutely hosed up on his Irish debut. Was unsuited by a small field and had to make his own run. And the second time when a beaten favourite, he'd have a good chance. And another horse in the race called Homme Publique, who is 3 times the price of the Paul Nicholls horse, Who Gree, but has literally nothing to find with that horse on his French form. And I think Homme Publique would definitely have a squeak for a place. And finally, it brings us to the last race of the day, the Old National Hunt Chase. Used to be the 4 mile, have been reduced to 3 mile 6. Pro jockeys this time, not the amateurs, and I think there's a standout in this in Next Destination. They've decided to come here instead of the Brown Advisory. Some of his back form is sensational. Grade 1 winner at Punchestown, he beat Delta Work, had 2 years off, he's come back, done absolutely nothing wrong so far. I think the way he races, he'll be suited by this test. You know, he just relaxes, races behind the bridle, and I think he could be too classy for these. Galvin has been laid out for this race for a very long time, and has got an obvious chance. moved stables back to Ian Ferguson's after the Gordon Elliott Schmozzle, and he'd obviously have a chance in that Galvin, but I just think Next Destination's got a touch of class, and he'd be my selection on that. So just to recap, Appreciate It in the Supreme, Shishkin in the Arkle, Happy Go Lucky and with Vintage Clouds each way, he's got a squeak in the Ultima, Goshen in the Champion Hurdle, Roxana in the Mares, River de Tel in the Boodles with On Public probably too big a price, and Next Destination too classy in the National Hunt Chase. So that basically sums up day one for me. Just my thoughts, and let's see how they get on. Good luck to everyone who's having a dabble at the festival, and I propose to do another one of these tomorrow with a little review of what happened on the Tuesday. So good luck everyone and enjoy.